Today, Mary Carter and Stephen Ross are live in Nashville, Tennessee, and diving into one of the most important and misunderstood topics in HVAC, job costing and pricing. They break down how contractors actually set their prices, from flat rate to divisor methods, and why confidence in your pricing can make or break your success. Whether you're trying to improve your margins, understand your numbers, or bring more consistency to your business, this conversation will help you price with purpose and grow with confidence. Let's get started.
Welcome back.
We're live and in person together. This
So
is amazing.
fun.
I know.
Second time we've been live?
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Live and in person. And we're in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, which is also kind of a treat.
It is.
And I heard that you were having some life-changing foods while you were out here.
Oh yeah. The donut shop around the corner has French toast donuts. Life-changing. Absolutely life-changing.
Well, I might have snuck it out and grabbed one. And after I saw your text, and I thought, yeah, that was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
I've never had a French toast donut, and so I'm bought in at this point.
It seems like it would be a lot until you have it, and then
it's just magic.
Magic. Yeah. I agree. I get to travel a lot, which is a privilege in my role. And it's hard sometimes between maintaining like good health and fitness goals, but then wanting to be in the foodie city and do the foodie thing. And last night I caved and had some hot honey wings. And
yeah,
I don't know if I could, I'm a Buffalo girl, but that was so good.
Nice.
It might be my go-to.
Nice. We also get some feedback from listeners every now and then, right? Our email address, HVAC_full_blast@tranetechnologies.com.
Well done.
But we also got some unusual feedback from one of our listeners.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Am I read in on this?
Your grandmother said you sound amazing.
She does. Thanks,
I
Graham.
mean, so shout out. I mean, we got to do a shout out. So some of our
Totally.
viewers and listeners every now and then.
We so appreciate her.
Heck yeah. Driving up our Spotify listener count.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's really good.
I like
And we do appreciate all of you who have liked, shared, followed, subscribed. I think I said at a meeting, like smash that like button like 400 times. So thank you so much for the support so far. Again, I think a couple episodes we said we were over the 20 episode mark, and that still blows my mind. So yeah.
So far so good.
Yeah. So as we keep this thing rolling and as we're traveling along, lots of conversations coming up with people. I think you and I have demonstrated that we're open to talking about different topics. And that has just kind of naturally led its way into more business development discussions. And one that's on top of my mind today is around job costing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's jump into it.
I know, right? It sounds so fun, doesn't it? If we just had a few people drop off, I wouldn't be surprised, right?
Yeah. Job costing in our industry is interesting. I think having had this is a privilege, I think, in that because we travel for our job, we are exposed to so many different types of companies and so many philosophies and so many mentalities that you kind of get to learn how different people do it in different markets or different size companies.
Yeah.
And one of the things about pricing that I always laugh about, I think, if you think about driving, if you're driving down the interstate and the speed limit's 65, you've got some people that are maybe not even quite at 65. You've got some people that are exactly at 65. And you got people who are a little bit over the speed limit. And then you got people who are a lot over the speed limit. Yeah. And if you asked any one of those drivers what they thought about the other drivers, they would say, well, the people going faster than me, they're crazy. They're going way too fast. And the people who are slower than me, they're idiots and they need to get out of the way. And so it's 100% just based on my relative point of view as to how fast I'm driving. I'm comfortable with that. But people driving faster are crazy. And the people driving slower are idiots. Right. And we might offend some people I'm using I might offend some people when I say this, but pricing in our industry is almost the same way. Anybody who's more expensive than me is ripping people off, and anybody who's less expensive than me is a chuck in the truck. They don't know what they're doing. Right. So the relativeness sometimes of pricing, and it's not easy to figure out how much do I need to charge. If I'm charging too much, then customers are going to go somewhere else and buy from somebody else. If I'm charging too little, then even if I get the job, I might not be making enough money to cover my bills and pay and stay open. And so it is both a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science to figure out, hey, what's that magic point where I'm not so expensive that people won't buy from me, but I'm not so cheap that I'm doing the work for free.
Right, right. No, it's so interesting. I think that's an amazing analogy because so often we do car comparisons, but that one's almost like, a car comparison within a market, right? And you're right. I mean, it's so true. It doesn't matter where I go. Every time I sit down with a dealer, the first thing they usually start with is, well, my market is different. And
Yes.
I'm like, no, really, really. Once again, I found another different market.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Yep.
And then those judgments, I'll say, of what people do in their markets kind of start to creep out. Well, everyone around me is so ridiculously high, or everyone around me doesn't know what they're doing. So I love that analogy that you put together. That really brings it true.
Yeah, and it's it's different. Maybe your perspective. If you're a selling technician or you're a sales rep for a heating and air company, you may or may not really have much control over the price.
Fair.
And that's a challenge a little bit, because what we teach from a sales training standpoint is that you have to have confidence. You have to have confidence in the products that you're selling.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have confidence in the company that you're working for.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have confidence that there are buyers in the market who are looking for what you sell at the price point at which you sell it,
Right.
which is not every buyer. So the challenge sometimes is, if you're a selling technician or if you're a salesperson and you had no hand in creating the pricing, or you don't understand where the pricing comes from, sometimes that could erode your confidence in your pricing. And so I think that's one challenge when it comes to how are we job costing, how are we coming to our price, is does everybody in the company go, yeah, that's where we should be charged, that's what we should be charging. And then, having been on both the salesperson side where I didn't really have any control, and then the owner's side where I did have control, obviously, maybe as an owner, I had a lot more confidence in the pricing because I'm the guy that came up with it. So I'm like, this is exactly what we should be charging. And so that I think I learned from that experience. Part of that challenge is, how do I transfer that confidence that we're at the right price point to the other people in the organization?
Right.
So that's a huge topic.
I know, but
we should just
good places to go. Yeah.
So you having been all over the country, what are some of the typical ways that you see heating and air contractors come up with pricing? Maybe we should just start there.
Yeah, definitely. We see, I would say, 4 primary ways that people approach pricing. First one, maybe the easiest, maybe the most common, being flat rate pricing. And flat rate pricing really does just say, this is my price, regardless of how long it's going to take or where it is. This is the price to do this job. And we see that a lot on the service side of the house, honestly.
Okay.
And maybe not the worst approach, honestly, just really being honest, right? If you know that this is a quick job and it normally takes a 30-minute time frame and it doesn't require a lot of technical expertise or parts, no chance that there's going to be multiple trips, maybe flat rate is the way to go, keeps the business moving, and is pretty simple to lay out in terms of a price book. Do you agree, especially maybe on service?
Yeah, and this is where I would say, it's at one point in the industry, I was the young guy, and now I'm the old guy. And, when I first got into it, time and materials was maybe on the service side a very predominant way. I mean, I remember in maybe the second house I owned, I needed a water heater. And I had a couple guys come out and quote water heaters. They all quoted time and materials. And what was interesting about that was, with the one guy came in, he said, well, look, I am a master plumber. And so my hourly rate is going to be higher than everybody else's hourly rate, but I'm a master plumber. And I said, well, I guess if you're a master plumber, this means you'll get it done quicker. And so he had quoted 4 hours and it took him 6 hours, but he was so embarrassed that he had bragged about being a master plumber and how good he would be that he only charged me for the 4 hours. So even though his hourly rate was higher, so I think, if you look at kind of our evolution as an industry, time and materials, hands down, was it. Mm-hmm. And then people went, well, wait a minute, you're penalizing the people who can work more efficiently and smarter if you're only charging by the hour. So therefore, let's go with flat rate. And we say, all right, this compressor change out is going to take 6 hours. Well, if you had somebody who's pretty skilled and they know what they're doing, they might get it done in 4.
Right.
And so we're not going to lower our price. We're going to reward the employee that can get it done in 4, assuming that he can do it correctly. So I think that's that flat rate came from.
Sure.
The question then is, okay, that might be a great way to do your service pricing. Is that a great way to do install pricing?
Well, totally. And time and materials, I think, is where we see install pricing.
Okay.
You know, for those that love flat rate service, they love a time and material install. That's what I normally see.
No kidding.
And I think it's because of exactly what you said of where they came from, and
Mm-hmm.
and then the ease at which that comes to price. You don't really have to dig too hard into your P&L to determine what that is. You know what the time is going to be, or you have a rough estimate based on who's doing it. And then you know what the materials are going to be because you have a price sheet from your distributor or whoever you're buying equipment from. That's kind of it. You didn't actually have to do any inward looking to the business to see what you need profitability wise. You can set price. You can go, honestly, you could register for a company and do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
So very common, time and materials and flat rate pricing. Those two by far in a way are what I hear people talk about the most. Okay. Now, not necessarily is what they're talking about what they're doing. I think the third one that a lot of people are actually doing is the divisor method.
Okay.
Which essentially takes your cost of goods sold divided by 1 minus your desired margin.
Okay.
So if I needed to make 30% on all of my jobs, I would take my costs divided by 1 minus 0.3. That gives me my job cost that I'd have to charge on all of those jobs to net 30%.
Okay.
So that's one school of thought as well. Any experience or stories that come to mind when you hear divisor method? I know you got something.
Yeah, well, it's, some people call it a divisor method. Some people are just doing a multiple method. Sure. Where they're just saying, I mean, when I first got into the industry, and again, I'm old now, so this is like 2006, 2007. The company I worked for, we would just take the equipment cost and multiply it by 2. Mm-hmm. So $3,000 worth of equipment, $6,000 worth install. And we figured out pretty quickly, like, we're not making any money. So then we went to, well, let's add in labor. So if it's $3,000 worth of equipment and $1,000 worth of labor, we were using $2 labor. Then I got $4,000 of cost of goods sold if you're doing it that way. So therefore, my price should be $8,000. Mm-hmm. And then we realized too, though, you just still have a lot of variables that maybe are unaccounted for. And so, when you're doing averages, if you have an average year, it works out great. But you could have some swings where you're like, hey, we did more attic installs or more basement installs, or, we had to run more of these types of flue pipes or whatever. And those things can really throw a wrench in it. And so it's tough. It's tough to do your pricing where you're shooting from the hip a little bit, which is what that methodology feels like.
Definitely. And multiplier and divisor, they have the desired outcome in mind, but they don't always take into account what's happening behind the scenes, which is what you're saying. Yeah. And by the way, I throw out 30% as a total example. No by means is that a best practice.
Sure. Yeah.
In lots of different ways that you can go about thinking it. Now, I mean, like on its face, the divisor method is good math. It will net you that desired outcome. It just, again, like there's a little bit of risk inherently if things change, or if you're taking on like lots of varieties of work, or efficiency, right? It doesn't take into any sort of account how efficient a crew might be or what might happen if problems occur.
Absolutely.
Which is where those risks kind of come in. But on its face, I mean, certainly whenever we teach the weighted average cost of financing, that is a weighted average. And then part 2 is the divisor to get the job cost. So I don't want to like knock it and say like, oh no, that doesn't work. It works. We just got to make sure that what you're putting into those costs is true. And that desired outcome is the right desired outcome. And I think that's like the level 2 to that, where people get a little stuck. Is 30% the right gross profit? I don't know. And a lot of times people will ask me, what is that number? I don't know. Without cracking into your P&L, like you really need to like dig deeper and find out what that is. 30% is a gross profit. Does that feel? I mean, I'll just ask you the wrong question, right? Is that the right number?
I would say 30% is maybe a residential new construction number. I think if you're in the add-on replacement business, you're targeting 40, 45, maybe 50% as a gross margin, because
I think
customer service. I mean, customer service, is so much more important that in order to provide the level of customer service you need to that add-on replacement customer, you got to bake it in your margins. If it's just new construction and nobody's at the job site and we can ship whenever and leave whenever and all that, like, then you get pretty slim. So I would say I don't know of a company at all that is in the 30% range in the add-on replacement space.
Sure. And again, like we're talking gross profit,
Gross
right?
profit,
There's still all of that. You're right. If you're going to have good customer service, your gross profit better be higher, because then all of those expenses and your overhead to make that good customer service happen are going to come out to your net profit.
Yeah.
So again, I feel like anyone who's maybe driving in a car right now could be thinking like, whoa, we're getting deep into it. And it's true, it is deep, but it doesn't have to be unapproachable. And it certainly is a conversation that I would say a good business owner worth their salt is thinking about constantly.
Yeah. And this we'll probably get some emails. And
I hope.
Let's go ahead and just preface, what are the emails going to be? Well, you're going to have somebody that emails in and says 45% is the right number. Anybody over that is ripping people off, and anybody under that doesn't know how to run a business. So we can just go ahead.
Hey,
I'll send those emails to you right now, just so they'll go ahead and be in your
it's
inbox.
the speed limit, right?
It is
Yeah,
the speed limit.
we're ready. Oh, that's so true, isn't it? Okay, so flat rate, time and materials, some sort of multiplier maybe in there, our divisor method. The last method that I often see with our base is the gross profit per crew day method, which has a lot of words and it's got a lot into it, right?
Yeah.
That's going to basically look at our cost of goods sold, our gross profit per crew day, and our overhead per day.
Okay.
Bake that down and put that into a job cost. Yeah. And it's cumbersome. It takes a little bit more of like a peel back the onion, look at everything that's going on in the business, divide that by different efficiency scores or maybe number of working days in the year, and then bake that down to a number. And by no means is it just like a set it and forget it. You absolutely have to go back and revisit it.
For sure.
And I think that's where maybe with the first three that we mentioned, people get a little caught. I said it, I forget it. We had TJ on the podcast talking about the Contractor of the Future study, and he actually found that 19% of customers don't do any sort of in-season or variable pricing as the year changes. Yeah. They are like, what is that? 81% of people set and forget. That's shocking.
It is shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, it really is, to some extent, we get emotionally attached to our pricing. And so if you see pricing, variable pricing, you feel, again, it's, do you believe in your pricing? I mean, that really is, if you're going to go out and sit down in front of a homeowner and the homeowner says, Mary, I just want to let you know you're $1,000 more. If you don't believe in your pricing, then it's almost impossible to control your body language and your facial expression and your immediate response, which is, okay, well, let me call the owner and see what we can do. If, on the other hand, you believe in your pricing and the homeowner says, hey, Stephen, you're $1,000 more, you go, yeah, that sounds about right. We hear that a lot. And so that confidence piece, if, hotels, airlines, I mean, just about everybody uses some sort of variable pricing, which is taking into account supply and demand. It is probably the better way to do it. The challenge is, can you do it and maintain the belief of your employees in your pricing model? Right. Because if they don't believe it, if the employee believes, hey, we're ripping off this homeowner, then man, you're going to have a hard time. Your sales are going to struggle. Your closing ratios dip. And so there's pros and cons to almost every business decision. The pro of variable pricing is probably the better way to do it mathematically to run your business. The con is that the emotional side of running the business, where do your employees believe in it? Do you believe in it? Do you feel good about it? That's the trick. That's the hard part.
Definitely. Yeah, that's so true. And it kind of going back to what you had said at the top of the podcast, I actually, not yet, keeping a growth mindset, I have not sat in the ownership role, but being in the sales role, especially when you're first starting out, you don't really know if you're high or if you're low. And then you go out there and you get a few rejections or you get a few yeses and you start to kind of get that feeling. And I've absolutely had those moments where I'm like, I am so high. Wow, I didn't even know I was this high. And you go back to your leadership and you kind of say like, our prices are too high. And you're right. Either they say, yes, and here's the reason, or they say, well, that's tough. Go sell it.
Yeah.
So I've had that experience too. One thing I would say that maybe we could empower salespeople with, though, is anytime that I've given the feedback that, hey, my prices really are too high and I'm really having a hard time closing. And here's what I've tried. You really can't go to that conversation without a few examples of what you've done, right? So here's what I've tried. Here's where I'm losing. Here's where I need help. Anytime I've been able to do that, I have been brought into the solution of, okay, well, what would help us get to the finish line? What could a promotion look like? What would create an enticing opportunity for someone to say yes? I think when salespeople can be involved in some promotion planning, there is a chance of a little bit more higher success.
Mhm.
I didn't know if you had any experience with that, or if you've seen that also, being able to give that feedback.
Yeah, I think, I had a call probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I won't name the company, but they've got 3 or 4 salespeople. And so they're like, hey, man, we need to talk to you. I'm like, okay. So we get on a call, and they said, hey, we need you to talk to the owner of the company and tell them that our pricing's too high. We're getting our butts kicked out there. Right? So I said, all right, let's talk through it. I'm kind of curious, because it could be that your pricing's too high.
Mhm.
Maybe. All right, but how would we know? What would we check and see? And so they give me some examples. Well, I went out to Mr. Smith's house and we were $3,000 too high. And I went out on this job and we were $8,000 too high.
Mm.
So, I mean, we had a bunch of examples, right, of individual case studies. And so we talked through a little bit, and I asked the question, hey, what percentage of jobs, when you lose them, do you lose based on price?
Mm.
And the salespeople were like, oh, 100%. I
Oh.
mean, that's what the customer tells us, right? I mean, why didn't you go with me? I mean, I thought we were buds. I thought you liked me. Well, your price was too high. So almost 100% of the time, customers are going to tell you that the reason they didn't go with you is that your price is too high.
Okay.
So that is just a mental toughness challenge of being in sales. A lot of times you get more no's than yeses. And so if you allow the customer telling you that your price is too high to impact your belief system, you're in trouble, because the customer will always tell you your price is too high.
Mm.
So then we went back and we said, okay, well, what's your closing ratio and what's your average ticket? Well, their team closing ratio was 45, 46. There was one guy that was at like 51, and then a couple people in the low 40s. And so I said, hey guys, I mean, here's the thing, 45% closing ratio based on the kind of leads you're getting, how much of those are general market leads, your existing customer base, and based on your average ticket and your margins, you're right where you're supposed to be. I mean, you're gonna lose more than you win,
Mhm.
but you're winning 45% of the time at a good average ticket and good margins. I told him to shut up and go sell something. I mean, I don't want to say that on the podcast, but I can completely empathize with that, because
Sure.
when you lose, we don't like losing, and
No.
when you lose and you're like, oh, we lost by a lot of money, like, then it does threaten your kind of belief system in your company. So just going, hey, your KPIs are right where they need to be. You're
Right.
doing great. Just keep doing it.
Yeah, that's a great point, because even as you were saying what the close ratio was for that company, I was like, well, that's not so bad. That was my first internal reaction. I was like,
Yeah.
that's actually pretty good. And then maybe peel back some other KPIs, like how many callbacks are happening, or how many times do we have to fix something, or what's our warranty rate look like? If all of those things are kind of in line too, then I'd say you're doing really well, right? Like, not only are you closing a good percentage, but then you're doing good work, you're justifying your price in the market.
Yeah. So we, now that I don't have a sales team that reports to me anymore, I can tell my secrets. But, one of the things that I did at my company was every time our closing ratio got over 40%, I would go into Pricebook Plus and I would raise our margins 1%.
Ooh, yeah.
And so by raising our margins 1%, we started out at maybe 35% when I first bought into the company.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 years later, we're at about 52, 53% in
Yeah.
terms of margin on markup on the equipment. And so the sales team's closing ratio continues to hover around 40, 45%. But the other piece to that is, if we've got more money coming in, what do we do with the more money? Well, we spend it on marketing.
Absolutely.
And so the salespeople are getting more leads. So yay. But when you get more leads, I mean, if you work at a small company and all you do is handle referrals and repeat customers, your closing ratio is going to be 70 or 80%.
Right.
If I go spend a bunch of money on marketing and I bring in a bunch of Google leads, well, your closing ratio on those Google leads is going to be 30%. So the more money you spend on marketing, the lower your closing ratio typically is, but you've got more installs and you've got more sales and whatnot. So that's that mental toughness too. When you're believing in your pricing, if you don't believe in your pricing, if you're job costing and you're going, oh, we were probably too high, and you cut, say, $500 out, the $500 you cut out was probably going into your marketing budget.
Yeah.
Because that's the lowest priority in terms of paying bills. And so therefore you create this death spiral of now we don't have any marketing. So we don't have any more leads coming in. And so that's that belief system.
Right, right. Well, we've talked about that too with slower times in the year, right? Inclination to just slash everything. But then all of a sudden you cut the fountain off. And now what?
Yeah,
right? You know,
absolutely.
you turned a slow season into a dead season. And
Yeah.
that's no good either. And then I imagine too, definitely a lot of that increase in profitability is going to go towards marketing, but it also has to at some point go to your growth too, right? If you're selling more and you need to invest more in employees and materials and trucks, maybe space, you know, all of that is going to require profit dollars.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say this was probably my steepest learning curve as a business owner.
Yeah.
Like, I would say I'm a pretty good sales guy. I like sales. I like marketing. I'm good at those things. I'm a mediocre business owner. So, but you're exactly right. I mean, the way we were building our company out, one of the things that would happen would be, let's say we did 4.5 million in revenue this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, okay, for next year, we want to do maybe 5.75 or maybe even 6 million.
Okay.
Well, the challenge is, how are you going to do that? You probably can't do 6 million revenue with the same overhead that you did 4.5 million with revenue, right? So to some extent, you've got to say, okay, well, we probably, in order to do 6 million, we probably need one more person answering the phones,
Mm-hmm.
which means we need another desk and another cubicle. And where's that going to go? And then we need another install truck and probably another service tech. And we might need another sales guy. And so to some extent, you're building the infrastructure before you actually get there. So a lot of times we would look at our books and we would go, man, we did 4.5 million, but our margins were thin. The reason our margins were thin was we were investing in future growth. So then the next year you do 6 million and you're like, oh, that was great. Except that we were building the infrastructure for the following year. And so that we had to be very careful in terms of growing is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's very expensive. And so there's that balance between, well, yeah, it'd be great to spend more money on marketing, but we also at some point have to recoup the investment we spent last year.
Yeah.
And how do you balance all of that?
I am finding that purely even with my own time management and as my sales career has grown and even my own targets from the company have grown, because we're always growing.
Yeah.
It's wild. They never go down. It's crazy.
Your boss never comes to you and says, Mary, 10% less sales next year.
I mean, you know, I keep an open hand for all outcomes, but that has not happened.
Mm.
And as that happens, right, now all of a sudden, some of the little operating tasks that I used to do, I can't really do them anymore. And you do have to learn to delegate and network. And the part of that is just kind of like growing up, right? You just got to get better at those things. I think what often happens to good salespeople or even good business owners is that operating work is very comfortable and it's very task oriented, and therefore you can check it off and move on. And you have to let that go.
Yeah.
And you got to move on to like the bigger strategy or the bigger picture work. And it's hard. It's hard to do, but essentially, in essence, same concept. You have to grow those support roles and support functions if you're actually going to grow that bottom line revenue, because it just naturally is going to require more time to do.
Absolutely.
So, okay, let's zoom back in maybe, because we've gone very big and broad, right?
Yeah.
And it's not so our industry.
It is.
We talked about 4 different job costing methods, and then we got into like, you know, and what does that mean to expanding cubicles? I mean, that's kind of how it goes. We did maybe too broad of a brushstroke on gross profit per crew day. Why is that method so critical? Why do dealers like it? How does that help the conversation with job costing versus maybe a flat rate or divisor, what have you?
Yeah, it's great because you're essentially burdening your labor rate. Mm-hmm. And the theory, again, this is maybe 10 or 15 years old, pre-pandemic, was that equipment, for the most part, is an unlimited supply. And we learned during the pandemic that's not really always true.
Not totally.
But if in theory we could, if I wanted to buy $1 million from you, I could buy $1 million. If I wanted to buy $1.5 million, I could buy $1.5 million.
Right.
So the limiting factor is your labor. How much labor do you have? So if you can tie all of your overhead and basically all these fixed expenses to that gross profit per man day, that's our limiting factor. And therefore we know, hey, we're going to cover these costs. The worst feeling ever is to get to the end of the month and go, we lost money. And, I think the other thing that happens with that gross profit per man day, and this is not necessarily a flaw just with that methodology. This is something, to your point, you just can never set it and forget it when it comes to pricing, is if you said, okay, the rent for the building, and I've got somebody answering the phones, and we've got the power bill and the water bill. So we have fixed costs. And let's say our fixed costs are $20,000 a month, and I do 20 installs a month. I say, okay, well, my quote unquote overhead is $1,000 per install. The problem is that some months you're only going to do 15 installs, and then some months you're going to do 25 installs.
Right. And
so, that's a challenge, is you're constantly reevaluating, hey, what are our fixed costs? I mean, the incremental costs, like a permit, you're going to charge each job for those. So you don't worry about, hey, what's the variable expense? The variable expense is absorbed in your margins, but it's what are the fixed costs? And I think, I got to go ride around in a NASCAR driving thing. Have you ever done that before?
I like one of those experiences in the cars. Yeah. I have not.
Oh my God.
So sorry. As soon as I said it, I knew you were going to say.
Yeah. But so here's what they told us is, you go through like 4 hours of training, and then they put you in a car and you're going around the track.
By yourself?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
In the one I did, they had a professional driver in the car in front of you.
Okay.
And so obviously stock cars don't normally have blinkers, but this specific car was outfitted. The right blinker was green and the left blinker was red.
Okay.
And so that professional driver wanted you to stay right off his rear end, because you got to go high enough up on the bank and so on. And so if you started getting too far behind or too close or something, he's using his blinkers to tell you speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. Okay. But the other thing they tell you is that car is built to do 175 miles an hour. And so if you're only doing, say, 75 miles an hour, you are actually damaging the car. You're burning up the engine. And, I thought when I was doing that, I was like, that's a heating and air company. If you're built to do 3 million and you only do 2.5 million, you're going bankrupt. You're going under.
Yeah.
Could you do 2.5 million and be profitable? Sure. But you got to be built to do 2.5 million. So that was our challenge. I had a business partner, so we were always bouncing ideas off of each other. But you're both forecasting, like, what do we think we can do next year realistically from a sales and marketing standpoint? And then how do we build the infrastructure that can do that? If we overbuild the infrastructure, no matter how much we grew, we're going to lose money.
We're going to hurt it.
If we undergrow the infrastructure, then we can't support the volume that we're trying to do. And so then we have bad customer service and customers burn out. So the ability to accurately forecast, what are we going to do next year? And then line up your overhead to say, okay, we are going to do that. Like, we can support it with this overhead amount. I think that comes before job costing. You got to know, hey, what's our overhead? What do we have to do revenue wise to cover our overhead? And then how do I build my pricing to make sure that overhead's covered, my margins are covered, and I'm good? Yeah. Because if you overshoot or undershoot your revenue, you can make money at any price point in this industry, but not if you have too much overhead.
Right.
I think that's the trick.
That's a key. That's totally the key. The other piece of that, and the reason why I like this method a little bit more than the others, is overhead doesn't sleep.
That's true. Yeah.
And overhead is going to exist whether it's Christmas vacation or whether it's spring break or not. The rents don't take a break just because you're closed for a week. Yeah. And this method kind of helps build that into a more realistic and actualized cost versus, okay, here's the month where I only have those 15 jobs, so I've covered overhead on these 15 jobs. But then like, oh my gosh, what if I come up short? Like, how am I going to ensure payroll and for all of my fixed laborers and whatnot? Yeah. I mean, that thing, we see that with people. And then you're talking about like business loans and lines of credit and upside down. It can get a little overwhelming quickly.
I remember we had one year where, we kind of had an idea of what's a break even number on a monthly basis for us. So, one year we said, okay, we got to do at least $350,000 in a month to cover all of our overhead. If we hit 400,000 in a month, we're probably making pretty good profit. If we hit 450, we're doing great. So it wasn't just, hey, if you do 350, you make 10%. If you do 400, you make 10%, or you do 450, you make 10%. That's not how it works in this industry, right? I mean, at 350, we made 0.
Right.
At 400, we probably made 8%. And at 450, we probably made 15%.
Right.
And so that was the trick. And I remember kind of one year just really dialing in on that. And then we did our business planning for the following year. We upped our marketing spend. We hired a few more people. And then I remember sitting down with my business partner, Tim, and I'm like, hey, how'd our month do? And he goes, well, we hit 600,000. I'm like, man, that is awesome. How much money do we make? He's like, 0, because now our new break even is 600,000.
Yeah.
And I remember just wanting to puke, because I'm like, oh my God, we got to do 600,000 a month just to break even. But that ultimately is how you grow. Your floor is always raising.
Right.
And so you got to be checking your pricing. Are we pricing accurately to cover our costs? Are we making sure that we've got enough in there? And if you want to grow the customer experience, hey, we want to make sure we have great installers. We want to make sure we have great service technicians. Well, great installers are more expensive than average installers. And so if you want great installers, you might as well just go ahead and bump your margin up now. And that's the other trick. I approach everything from a sales standpoint, right?
I thought you were going to say from a trick.
No. But salespeople say, man, if I had great installers, then I would be able to sell more.
Yeah.
And that's not how the real world works. The real world works by, if you can sell more, I will get you some great installers. And so that's that other piece, is that we have to bring the money in first so that we've got the money to spend it.
Right.
And if you're in sales and you're waiting for the company to get great installers until you feel comfortable about the price point you're charging, you're never going to get there. You have to get comfortable with, hey, we're going to raise our pricing so that we can go get great installers.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
That is tough. So one of the earliest memories I have as a kid is my dad was in the camera sales industry. And at the time, a lot of consumers bought cameras at Best Buy or big box retail stores.
Okay.
And one of our favorite things to do on Saturday mornings, and I think it was as a collective family, our favorite thing to do, because my mom was like, I need some time alone, get these kids out of the house, is we'd go to big box retail stores and get all the flyers, and we would compare prices of all of the different cameras and the styles. And, for all I know, my parents were making it a learning project for me, and it was subliminally, a math project, but whatever, that's what we did. So that was just something that my dad did routinely as a sales guy, to just kind of see what was out there. Once you set your price, is it a good idea to compare yourself against others, or do you just take that confidence stride and go forward? I could make the argument that you got to do both. You do have to be confident, but also it is a good idea to see what the market is bearing out there. You don't necessarily change based on every flyer you see, but you do want to know, right? I would assume.
I think so. I mean, if you had a stay-at-home mom that you knew, one of the employees' wives or your buddy's wife or whatever, or a stay-at-home dad, and you're like, hey, I'll pay you $50 for every heating and air estimate you give me. That's a great way to just get a little bit of market intelligence.
Oh, I like
just go,
that.
hey, what are we competing against out there? And I think, on one hand, I'm not changing my pricing because of what other people are doing, but I do have to know, what are they charging? Because what am I going to have to overcome?
Sure.
I had a phone call literally probably an hour and a half ago, and the sales guy goes, I'm at $28,000, 2 systems. The homeowner has another quote, $22,000. And so we're talking through, how do you sell that?
Yeah.
Fortunately for him, he's got a pretty healthy belief system in his company. He's like, we have great installers.
Okay. We
have good systems in place. And so from that standpoint, he's able to sell it because he believes in it. But man, it would be tough to sell that price difference if you really do feel like, well, hey, this is a cabinet and a condenser fan motor and a coil, and that's a cabinet and a condenser fan motor and a coil, and they got installers and we got installers, and so therefore our pricing should all be the same.
Yeah.
If that's your belief system, it's tough.
Oh, interesting. So what's his strategy? Has he picked a path yet?
Well, you got to pay extra for that if you want the sales training that goes with the podcast.
Whoa, we're not on a subscription mode yet.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's, we talk about belief systems, behaviors, and techniques.
Mm-hmm.
So in his case, he's got a pretty good belief system. So that's step one.
Yep.
The behavior is you got to get in there and fight for it. And you don't run from it. You don't hide from it. You're like, yeah, own it. We are more expensive. And then the technique is, can you successfully explain that and handle it? And then the last part is what I told him kind of at the end, which is, hey, you win some and you lose some. So if your closing ratio is 45%, that's right where you should be. If your margins are good, that's right where you should be. And so if you go and you win this one, awesome. But if you go and you lose this one, it doesn't mean that you should lower your margins. It doesn't mean that you should do anything different. You should keep doing what you're doing, because if you can close $28,000 tickets at a 45% closing ratio at good margins, you'll be great in this business.
Yeah.
So just stick with it.
Great advice. I love that a lot. So yeah, so basically, I mean, there are lots of different ways to go about it. One is necessarily better or worse than the other, depending on what you're looking at. However, if you want to get the most technical and really account for all 365 days of the year, we would certainly look towards the gross profit per crew day model as a best practice, so to speak. However, you can get pretty far with divisor methods or flat rate, depending on what kind of job it is. Just lots of different ways to look at that conversation. And then moreover, once you set that price, be confident and go win that business.
I think, can we revisit the variable pricing a little bit?
Sure.
Can I put you on the spot?
Okay.
Do manufacturers have the same margin on their builder grade equipment that they have on their 20-SEER variable equipment?
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Am I allowed to ask very direct, pointed questions?
Oh, well, you know what? Pay and find out. No, no, I would say I don't think I'm spilling any beans when we admit that that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason for that is that the price point at which the entry level equipment is sold, those buyers are very price sensitive.
Absolutely.
Right? So therefore, we have to recognize those folks are price sensitive. But the kind of person that maybe does go out and buy a 20-SEER variable speed system with a good indoor air quality component and so on, they're typically not as price sensitive. So the other piece to say to a dealer is, I would say, well, if the manufacturer, who has a massive marketing department with all of these big brains that have studied pricing strategy, if that's how they do it, then don't you think maybe you should do it too? And so I think going into it to say, okay, we do want to use gross profit per man day, meaning we've got to account for our overhead no matter what.
Right.
But we can scale up our margins as we go up, because that's what everybody does. That's what Cadillac does.
Sure.
Like any big brand. I mean, it just, and so I think that's the other piece, is to say, okay, gross profit per man day, you're covering your overhead, you got your built-in margins, fantastic, but like go get that higher end equipment. Because that's where your margins are.
Well, and you'll be able to, right? Because it will increase the cost of goods sold that you're building into that job, but then based on the efficiency, you're winning at a rate that is going to allow you to make money. So we love that. Yeah.
I think, again, learned lots of lessons as a business owner that maybe I didn't learn as a sales guy, but product mix becomes so important as a business owner, because you only got a certain number of days per week where you can do installs. You only have a certain number of manpower you can put at it. So that product mix, if you can get your average ticket up and the margins are slightly better at that price point, and all of your referrals come from the higher end equipment because people notice the difference. Then as a business owner, I would say I almost focused on that as my top KPI. What is our product mix? If it's all just basic equipment at low margins, man, we're going to have to sell a lot of those to make any money. If, on the other hand, we can sell some better equipment, our margins are going to be better. We can get better installers. We can expand the company. However, we could add more money to the marketing business, into the marketing fund. And that's our repeat referral customer base.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Well, And with that, another best-in-class episode
Yeah.
of HVAC Full Blast.
HVAC full blast. I like
When are we seeing each other again? We got to do this more often.
I think it's 2027.
Oh
so
my
we'll do it
gosh,
again.
isn't that the truth? Well, it's only because we're out there making money, as we love to do.
Yes.
Well, I'm Mary Carter. He's Stephen Ross. HVAC_full_blast at tranetechnologies.com is how to reach us.
Follow.
Smash that like button. We love
Share with your friends.
It's not fun to say smash that like button. I know. I kind of overdo it, but I can't help it.
There's so many jokes right now, and none of them can I say on this podcast.
No, not at all.
Anyway.
No.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.